10 minutes or so talking about HAARP.
HAARP is the transition point between observation and application. We spent most of the 20th century developing the technology to observe the processes that go on in the sky and then observing the processes to figure out what the dynamics of the sky are, how the sky works. HAARP was created to take that knowledge of how systems work and put them to use to try to figure out how we could make the atmosphere work for us. This is called atmospheric modification. And this is HAARP is a joint project of the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Air Force keeps saying, officially has the position, we have no interest in controlling the weather. But they are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in modifying the atmosphere. And the difference is, with modifying the atmosphere, you can do a whole lot more than just controlling the weather. You can force the atmosphere to take shapes, and these are called waveguides, and you can actually make it bounce radio waves for you. You can do quite a number of these things, and so what HAARP is a platform for developing for proving out whether their ideas about what they can make the atmosphere do for us really work or not.
Are you sure it's not a weapon?
No, I'm not sure. In fact, there's an awful lot of evidence that it is a weapon, but the evidence is more that it is what is called a force multiplier, which is something that in itself is not a weapon, but multiplies or increases the effectiveness of your military forces. For example, if you wanted to land on an enemy beach, you would and surprise them. You don't want them to know you're coming. So if you could create fogs and cloud cover, your guys could sneak in under cloud cover, increasing their stealthy effect, increasing the surprise and the effectiveness of the invasion. And while the thing that increases, puts up the cloud cover itself isn't a weapon, it's a force multiplier. And HAARP clearly is a force multiplier. The construction of HAARP was finished by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency.
What does that tell you?
And the agents, in DARPA, there are 8 directorates, there are 8 offices, and the office that got HAARP was the TTO, the Tactical Technology Office, whose primary job is making force multipliers. And the guy who got the project, Dr. Sheldon Z. Meth, you might want to Google him. Dr. Meth worked for 15 years before coming to DARPA. He worked for an organization that I can never remember its name. Its acronym is SIAC. CIA's spelled backwards.
Uh-huh.
It's the 9th largest defense contractor in the U.S., and while it has many contracts with the DoD, Department of Defense, its primary contracts are with the intelligence community, CIA, NSA, etc. He has spent his career making things for the spooks. Now he comes over to DARPA, and at DARPA, when he was given the HAARP project, he was working on 3 other projects at the time. 2 were laser projects. One was called Air Laser, and the other was Laser Star. And one was some sort of a munition, and I have never been able to figure out what it is. I've read every word I can get on it, and I simply could not make head nor tail out of what the description described. But it was very interesting. You know, HAARP is an acronym. It stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. The weird munition that Dr. Meth was working on was also an acronym. It spelled out mayhem.
Mayhem. How about that?
Yeah. So
it reminds me a little bit of Tesla's ray technology.
Yes, very much so. So what HAARP is, and for those who don't know, HAARP is a field of antennas on the ground in southeastern Alaska that's so linked together as to work as one giant antenna. And it is today the world's largest radio broadcasting station. But it's not designed to broadcast for human ears. It's designed to inject a fantastic amount of radio frequency energy into a spot at the top of the atmosphere. And currently, at full capacity, it is now at 3.6 million watts. Now, you probably know that the largest legal AM radio station in the U.S. is 50,000 watts. HAARP is 72,000. 50,000-watt radio stations, injecting their entire output into a spot about 12 miles across by about 2.5 miles deep by 90 miles up. Now, what that does is it heats that portion of the atmosphere by several thousand degrees, which makes HAARP a type of device called an ionospheric heater. And ionospheric heaters have been in use since the 1970s, but HAARP is a unique, one of a kind, in that it uses a unique ability to focus the radio waves coming out of the field so they get focused into the spot. With a regular antenna, the energy goes away from it in a cone with the point of the cone at the antenna and the wide end up in the sky. With HAARP, they've turned the cone upside down with the wide end on the field, on the ground, on the field of antennas, and the point in the sky. Now, what injecting that 3.6 million watts into the atmosphere does is heats it to the point where the molecules of the atmosphere explode, blow apart, and in doing that they give off a packet of energy which includes a stream of ELF, extremely low-frequency radio waves, which penetrate deep into the earth and deep into the sea. And the U.S. Navy has been using HAARP for 15 years to communicate with deeply submerged submarines. Now, a curious thing is that using this ELF, you can do something called earth-penetrating tomography, which is a brand-new science that did not exist before 1980. And HAARP was originally funded to do this earth-penetrating tomography to verify counter-proliferation treaties. Its purpose was to find and monitor enemy underground bases for the manufacture and launch of weapons of mass destruction.
HAARP was?
HAARP was. That's the whole reason it was funded. Now, the curious thing is that in the 15 years it's existed, it's never done that. At least wise, there's not a single shred of evidence that they've ever done it. It's not mentioned anywhere on the website, not in any of the scientific papers published, which leads one to ask, are they thumbing their nose at the U.S. Senate, who said that you don't get funding unless you agree to do this? Or have they done it and done it so successfully they don't want the world to know what a capacity they actually have, and they're just staying mum on the subject? Now, the other side of this is that when you blow the molecules of the atmosphere apart, they are converted into a plasma, which is an electrically charged gas. And that electrically charged gas goes out into space until it runs into something to stop it, which is the Earth's magnetic field. It gets trapped between the lines of force and spreads out, forming a shield of electrically charged particles that will disrupt or destroy anything electrical coming through it. It's a ground-based Star Wars weapon system. Now, DARPA announced, not only did they announce its completion, but they also announced what they'd done with it, what they had succeeded in applying knowledge of how the atmosphere works to accomplishing. And they list 4 things that they've done with it, and of the 4 things they've done, they do it with 3 bullets, because the first one does 2 things at the same time, and that is Number one, the generation of extremely low-frequency, very low-frequency radio waves for submarine and other subsurface communication, and the reduction of charged particle populations in the radiation belts to ensure safe spacecraft systems operations. Now, that's putting a smiley face on the Star Wars weapon system, in that the way they reduce the charged particle populations in the Van Allen belts is they fill up the Van Allen belts with their own particles, with the generated plasma. That forces that overburdens the radiation belts and forces them to rain out, which means they rain hard radiation back to Earth. And I can assure you there has never been an environmental impact study done on what that means. One can speculate what it means, but we don't have any hard science on it. Now, they say this is to increase safe spacecraft operations. And if that were the case, this would be a good thing, because in order to get into outer space, you have to go through the radiation belts. But in going through the radiation belts, there is a problem. In fact, one of the stories that we never went to the moon says that if an astronaut were to go through the radiation belt, he would be killed in doing so.
Well, you've done your homework on HAARP, Jury. We'll be back with you in a moment on Coast to Coast. Stay on.